Welcome to Dreamy Tales, a place where gentle, relaxing stories will guide you into a deep sleep. On this channel, we'll be sharing soothing stories to help you unwind and forget the worries of the day. If you enjoy these peaceful moments, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our bedtime tales. Let's create a space of relaxation together each night. Now, before we dive into tonight's story, let's take a few moments to relax your body and mind. Find a comfortable spot to sit or lie down. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, feeling the fresh air filling your lungs, and slowly exhale, letting the tension in your body gradually melt away. Repeat this 3 more times. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more relaxed and ready to enter the magical world of stories. Now, loosen your shoulders, gently massage your face, and release any remaining tension. Pay attention to any areas in your body that still feel tight, maybe in your neck, back, or legs, and gently let them relax. Next, we'll do a short guided visualization. Imagine yourself in a beautiful garden under the night sky, with the soft moonlight shining down. You can hear the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the sound of water flowing gently in the distance. Feel the cool breeze brushing against your face. Now that your body and mind are relaxed, let's step into tonight's story. But before we begin, remind yourself that you deserve these moments of relaxation, and let go of all worries as you listen to each word. And now, as you are fully relaxed, let's begin our journey into tonight's tale. Allow my words to guide you into a world of dreams and serenity. Relax and listen slowly. A great many years ago, specifically back in the year 1921, something most unusual yet wondrously touching occurred in a venerable city whose precise name has been lost to time. The roads, always bustling, wove in intricate patterns around the grand edifices that stood like silent witnesses to history. Ornate lamp posts lined the streets, casting warm halos of light through the swirling fog on chilly nights. It was in one of the oldest quarters of this city that the story unfolds, though few, if any, have heard it. The events were never formally recorded, and those involved either couldn't speak or had nobody to share their tale with. Fortunately for you, I have the rare privilege of recounting this story, mysterious as it may seem. Our tale revolves around 2 peculiar individuals. One happened to be a cat, lacking the ability to form words yet conveying emotions more eloquently than many humans could. Early on, it remained nameless, wandering streets and alleys in search of scraps and warm corners. The second character was an elderly woman who had lived a life both remarkable and lonely. She called herself Amara, though that name too seems to have become a relic of a forgotten era. Amara resided in a gracious old house near the heart of the city, a residence with walls that could tell endless stories if they could speak. Indeed, her home had an air of grandeur. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, and tall windows overlooked a world that had long since slipped beyond her grasp. Amara had not always been reclusive. Many years prior, she was a celebrated concert pianist, traveling from city to city, enthralling audiences with her artistry. The hush that fell across the crowd whenever she appeared at the grand piano was always followed by thunderous applause. Every note she played stirring hearts and minds with unmatched beauty. But as time marched on, circumstances changed. Perhaps it was the natural flow of life, or maybe certain heartbreaks led her to retreat from the world. Eventually, she returned to her ancestral home and found herself enveloped by a solitude that pressed in from every corner. The wide corridors, once alive with music and voices, now lay silent. Dust motes drifted in the morning light like tiny lost spirits, caught in a realm of stillness. In her later years, Amara lived in what one might call a perpetual twilight of routine. Each dawn brought the same early rising, a soft shuffle of slippers against the hardwood floors, and a quiet trip to the kitchen to brew tea. She would settle by the largest window in her sitting room, gazing out at the awakening streets below. Morning vendors delivering vegetables, shopkeepers sweeping doorsteps, schoolchildren running late with satchels bouncing on their backs. She watched them as though they were performers in a play whose plot she no longer understood. No one could have guessed that behind those observant eyes of hers lay an ever-present ache, an emptiness left by the passing of old friends, family, and the bright hopes of yesteryear. Yet, fate can be unpredictable. One particularly damp morning, the clouds hanging low and gray, Amara noticed a small, unkempt cat on her doorstep. It appeared drenched, with matted fur and wide, searching eyes. She observed it from behind the curtain, heart fluttering with a note of pity she had tried to keep hidden for so long. In a single twitch, she drew the curtain closed and turned to her tea, wondering how the creature had found her door. But the cat returned the next day, then the following one, and the day after that. Each time it would sit, tail curled around its paws, gazing at the heavy wooden door like a silent sentinel. Amara did not open the door. She did not feed it. She convinced herself that her quiet life had no room for companions. Though her heart stirred whenever she caught sight of the cat's imploring green eyes, she held fast to her self-imposed solitude, unwilling to invite any new presence that might unravel her carefully maintained composure. Weeks passed in this fashion, the cat's steadfast vigil never wavering. Unconsciously, Amara began looking for it each morning, opening the door just a fraction wider each time she rose. She would sip her tea, peering over the rim of her teacup to see if the cat still lingered there on the stoop. Inevitably, it was. Its fur was scraggly and drab, yet somehow it seemed to glow with a quiet resilience. Eventually, she grew exasperated with her own curiosity. She tried to distract herself by burying her nose in the old diaries and letters she kept locked away, or by running her fingers over the silent piano keys in the parlor. But the cat hovered at the edge of her consciousness, as though beckoning her to open her heart. Amara often wandered the neighborhood park in the afternoon, strolling along footpaths lined with stately chestnut trees. It was her one indulgence in an otherwise cloistered existence, a chance to breathe fresh air and observe passers-by from a polite distance. On one such walk, she heard a faint rustle behind her. Turning, she spied the same cat following at a measured distance, never meowing, never hurrying, just keeping her in sight. An inexplicable warmth spread through her chest, a fleeting sensation she found both comforting and unsettling. She had long insisted she needed no one. Here was this tiny creature, persistent yet respectful, bridging her quiet world with gentle devotion. That evening, after returning to her old house, Amara busied herself preparing a simple meal, a bowl of soup accompanied by a slice of bread. She made certain not to indulge in extravagant feasts. Her life had become as simple as her solitary dinners. Yet, while she stirred the soup, she found herself peeking out the window. The cat was there again, perched with regal dignity on the stone step, ears alert, eyes unblinking. Before she could stop herself, Amara felt a pang of empathy for the creature. She told herself she was only curious about how long it might stay. More days slipped by in a gentle repetition of routine. Morning, tea and the cat's silent vigil. Afternoon, a walk where the cat would discreetly follow her path. Evening, a lonesome dinner inside the quiet walls of the manor while the cat rested on her step, enveloped in the dusk. One misty morning, the chill in the air made Amara's bones ache more than usual. Gathering her shawl tight around her shoulders, she opened the door and saw the cat trembling against the dampness. The pitiful sight froze her in place. Something within her, dormant for years, stirred yet again. An impulse to ease the creature's suffering. With a sudden resolution that almost startled her, she stooped down, scooped the cat into her arms, and brought it indoors. She closed the door gently, her heart pounding. The cat, though at first tense, soon melted into her hold. For a moment, Amara remained there in the grand foyer, uncertain of what she had just allowed into her life. The house, typically silent except for the whisper of her slippers or the creak of aged floorboards, now resonated with an unfamiliar presence. She set the cat down on the rug, rummaged through her kitchen, and poured a shallow dish of milk. The cat lapped it eagerly, stirring a small smile on Amara's face. They spent much of that day observing each other. The cat sniffed at antique furniture, occasionally pawing at the dust motes in the sunlight. Amara felt an unexpected serenity watching it explore. She realized a quiet hush no longer blanketed the house. Now there was the sound of soft footfalls and the gentlest rumble of purring. Although she had never actively disliked animals, she had convinced herself that her life had no space for any living companion. So, she found herself pleasantly unsettled by how natural it felt to have the cat around. As the sun slid westward and cast the parlor in golden light, Amara ventured into the piano room. She rested her fingers on the polished keys that had once brought her roaring ovations from music lovers around the globe. She pressed down tentatively and produced a single lingering note. The cat stared, tipping its head quizzically. Encouraged by those bright feline eyes, she tried a chord, letting the resonance fill the space. For a moment, she recalled the elation of her concert days. She saw herself, dressed in elegant gowns, stepping onto stages from London to Vienna. She remembered the swirl of spotlights overhead, the hush just before her performance, and the exhilaration of watching a crowd lean forward in anticipation. How astonishing that an unexpected visitor, a simple stray, could rekindle that once lost spark. That evening, the cat curled up near the hearth, lulled by the gentle flicker of flames. Amara settled into her armchair, knitting a scarf she had long neglected. She mused about the cat's origins, wondering what roads it had traveled. Had it been abandoned? Was it born on some quiet side street and forced to forage in trash bins for sustenance? The cat gave no answers, of course. Still, she felt connected to it in a way she could not fully explain. It was as though they shared some unspoken understanding. They were two souls, each solitary in their own way, brought together by sheer chance. That same night, instead of shooing the cat out into the dark, she allowed it to accompany her upstairs. Her bedroom was large enough to fit a small ensemble, with a grand window overlooking the flickering lights of the city. Once a place of lonely slumber, the bedroom felt surprisingly welcoming now. The cat hopped onto the foot of the bed as she arranged the blankets. She hesitated, but the cat's soft purring like a lullaby put her mind at ease. Sliding under the covers, she listened to the comforting rhythmic sound, realizing she had not felt such calm in years. Days turned into weeks, and the cat became a cherished part of Amara's household. She discovered new facets of her tiny companion's personality. It had a playful streak and would bat at stray strings or chase dust motes with gusto. It also had its dignified moments, gazing out the window as though pondering the mysteries of the vast world beyond. She found herself speaking to the cat, sharing her reflections on the day's weather or the half-remembered tunes that danced through her head. In return, the cat offered unwavering presence. She decided to call him Joskin, an homage to a composer she'd once admired in her days of musical study. He seemed to accept this name with the grace of a feline who knows it has found home. Before Josquin arrived, Amara seldom revisited her past. It seemed too painful to recall the times when she was not alone. But in the silence of the house, now gently broken by the cat's purring, her memories began to surface. She remembered standing on the stage at the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg, her fingers dancing over the keys in a mesmerizing performance of Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody. She recalled an evening in Paris, performing Debussy under crystal chandeliers while society's elite looked on, rapt. And, perhaps most poignantly, she remembered a dear friend who had accompanied her on these tours, sharing both the excitement and the inevitable tears that come with life on the road. However, time and distance had scattered them apart. Part of her realized how those lonely years may have been a kind of mourning for the ephemeral nature of success. She had tasted the brilliance of standing ovations and the tranquility of hushed concert halls just before the final notes faded. Each moment felt like a lifetime condensed in one performance. To lose that world, due to aging, shifting interests of the public, or personal heartbreak, was to lose an integral piece of herself. And so she shut the door on others, determined not to feel that sort of heartbreak again. But Josquin's arrival gently dissolved the wall she had so meticulously constructed. One afternoon, she opened the lid of her piano bench, rummaging through old scores. The cat hopped onto the bench and peered inside as if curious about these yellowed pages covered in notes. Amara chuckled softly. It almost seemed like he was urging her to play. With a delicate touch, she placed one of her favorite preludes on the stand and began to play. Her technique had rusted slightly, but the emotional core of her music was as vibrant as ever. The parlor, which had once been entombed in stillness, reverberated with warm chords and delicate arpeggios. Josquin blinked slowly, seeming to approve of every melody that poured from her soul. Although Amara would never fully know the cat's past, let us pause to imagine it. In some narrow alleyway lined with chipped bricks and flickering lamplight, Josquin had likely been born to a stray mother, alongside siblings whose whereabouts remained unknown. His earliest memories might have been the clatter of passing carriages, the pungent smell of fish scraps, and the thrill of scampering across cobblestones in search of warmth. Perhaps he had once known the sting of a kicked paw, or the fear of a dog's fierce bark. For a time, the city's labyrinth of streets was his entire existence. Corners that promised safety, hidden spots behind market stalls where he might find morsels to eat. Now, within the grandeur of Amara's house, he was at last discovering a different side of life. A gentleness that transcended words. That gentleness manifested in the smallest gestures. The fresh dish of milk each morning, the soft cushion by the fireplace, the spot of sunlight near the piano. Over time, Josquin seemed to shed the tension of survival. Even his fur, once matted and dull, began to shine with new vitality. Amara would sometimes tease him, calling him a princely cat, while Joskin merely flicked his tail in regal acceptance. If ever there were a sudden noise, he might dart behind a chair, but he learned to trust that no harm awaited him here. As Josquin's presence became a constant, a wonderful shift took place. Amara's once reclusive habits began to evolve. She ventured outside more frequently, purchasing better groceries to cook more adventurous meals. Occasionally, she even allowed herself to greet her neighbors, whom she had previously avoided. Word spread that the elusive woman in the grand old house was seen browsing the flower market, sometimes with a cat perched on a windowsill at home, watching with keen eyes. The simple knowledge that someone or something relied on her, that she had another living creature who found solace in her company, reignited her sense of belonging to the world around her. One day, while picking up fresh fruit, a local vendor named Mrs. Harcourt struck up a conversation. She remarked on how she had glimpsed a cat in Amara's window. Before, Amara would have ended the conversation politely but swiftly. This time, she found herself recounting, albeit briefly, how she had found Joskin and let him into her house. The vendor's face lit up, and she offered a small parcel of leftover fish scraps, smiling widely as she said, "For your little friend." Surprised, Amara accepted the gesture with heartfelt thanks. On her walk home, she marveled at how a single cat could shift an entire perspective, opening her up to communal warmth she had all but forgotten existed. In the evenings, as twilight cloaked the city in a hush, Amara and Joskin fell into a cherished routine. She would simmer a modest dinner, sometimes sautéing vegetables with aromatic herbs. The cozy kitchen, lamp-lit and brimming with the scents of thyme and rosemary, felt markedly different from the lonely space it had been before. Joskin would seat himself in a corner, tail swishing, observing every movement she made. After their respective meals, his of fish scraps or milk, hers of a simple but comforting fare, they would retire to the parlor. There, she would open the curtains to watch the city's street lamps flicker to life. Sometimes she read her favorite poems aloud. Though Josquin presumably did not understand the words, he appeared captivated by the gentle rise and fall of her voice. If the mood struck her, she ventured to the piano, filling the old house with lilting nocturnes or spirited sonatas. On nights when her arthritic hands protested, she simply sat by the fire with the cat on her lap, knitting or sipping tea. In that tender silence, she realized that companionship did not require conversation, only presence and empathy. Though the cat had been nameless when he first appeared, Joskin was not just an afterthought. He had become essential. Calling him Josquin felt natural, like a friend she had known for years. In truth, bestowing a name upon him also signified that Amara had accepted him as family. Far from the stray who once trembled in the cold, Josquin now reclined regally in plush chairs, living a life of comfort he could scarcely have imagined. Amara herself was undergoing a transformation. For so long, her memories of triumph as a pianist had devolved into regrets and emptiness. But music resonated through her halls again. Sunlight seemed to pour in more generously, and she discovered herself humming snatches of old lullabies while completing her daily tasks. Sometimes she would recite stories of the great composers she had studied: Mozart, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff. And though she had no human audience, her cat never looked bored. Indeed, he stared back with luminous eyes that suggested unwavering attentiveness. Perhaps that was all she needed: a non-judgmental companion who listened, witnessed her small joys, and offered quiet acceptance. One day, Amara decided to do something she had not done in many years: invite a few acquaintances over for tea. She carefully placed a lace tablecloth over the old mahogany table, set out her best porcelain cups, unused for decades, and arranged a modest bouquet of flowers from her garden. Joskin seemed to sense her excitement, weaving around her legs as she moved about the house to tidy up. The invited guests were a few neighbors and an old acquaintance from her concert days who happened to be passing through the city. Though the gathering was humble, it marked a momentous occasion for Amara, who had once resolutely barred her door to outsiders. When the guests arrived, they were welcomed by the delicate piano music drifting through the foyer. Joskin peered from beneath a chair, seemingly intrigued by these newcomers. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, reminiscent of an earlier era in Amara's life. She recalled the dining halls in grand hotels, the after-concert soirees in smoky backstage lounges. Though far simpler now, these few hours of companionship reminded her of the warmth that fellowship can bring. After they departed, Amara let out a soft sigh of contentment. She realized her heart felt lighter. The house, though quiet once more, no longer seemed lonely. It felt lived in, suffused with echoes of laughter, clinking cups, and earnest conversation. Josquin hopped up beside her on the parlor sofa, as if to confirm he too found solace in this renewed sense of community. As the weeks melted into months, Amara's passion for music reignited in full. She decided, rather shyly, to accept an invitation to perform at a small charity recital benefiting local orphanages. The thought of returning to the stage after so many years filled her with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. She practiced tirelessly, warming her hands before each session and working through old pieces she used to play with effortless grace. Despite her older age, the muscle memory returned. She relived the same adrenaline she had once felt stepping under the bright stage lights. On the evening of the recital, she left Joskin tucked in safely at home, though she whispered a promise to return soon. Arriving at the modest concert hall, a far cry from the grand venues of her past, she felt her heart race. Could she still captivate an audience? Would her hands obey her mind's commands? Gathering all her courage, she stepped onto the stage, took her seat at the piano, and closed her eyes. The moment her fingers pressed the keys, a resonant chord spread through the room like a warm wave. She played pieces by Chopin and her beloved Debussy, each note a reflection of her soul's journey. Sadness, regret, nostalgia, and above all, a quiet triumph that life could still hold beauty. The small audience was transfixed. When the performance concluded, applause filled the cozy hall, and in that applause, Amara felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. Music had found her again. Returning home late that night, she opened the door, half expecting Joskin to be asleep. Instead, she discovered him perched alert on the windowsill, staring into the moonlit street as if waiting for her. She gently picked him up, sank into her armchair, and recounted every detail of her return to the stage in hushed tones. Though no words passed from him to her, his soft purring felt like the purest form of encouragement she could have asked for. In the midst of city life, a place that had once seemed so distant and formidable, Amara and Joskin forged a simple but profound connection. Days began to revolve around their shared routines: a warm greeting at dawn, a peaceful walk in the park with Joskin trailing behind, an afternoon of either piano practice or reading, and cozy evenings together by the fire. Little by little, Amara's mind shifted from the weight of old memories to the gentle wonder of the present moment. Through it all, her house underwent a subtle transformation. rooms no longer felt hauntingly empty. The sound of music, the soft click of paws on the floor, and the comforting hum of the kettle gave it a welcoming air. Even the neighbors noticed how the formerly somber windows now occasionally glowed with lamplight, and the silhouettes of a woman and her cat. Curious children passing by would press their noses to the glass, hoping to glimpse the elusive feline sitting on the piano bench. Amara, upon spotting them, would sometimes wave, a small gesture of warmth that she herself might not have believed possible a few months prior. Nighttime always seemed to hold its own magic. After extinguishing most of the lamps, Amara would wander through the corridors, shutting the heavy drapes. The house's age revealed itself in the flickering shadows cast by the fireplace. She found an odd comfort in the creaks of the stairs and the low whistle of wind in the eaves. Joskin followed her to the bedroom, tail swaying languidly. The bed, with its plush quilts, had room enough for both. Each night she traced swirling patterns on his fur while her eyelids grew heavy. His soft purring lulled her into a sense of protection she hadn't felt since she was a child in her grandmother's embrace. Sometimes, in the quiet of her dreams, she found herself back on a grand stage or traveling through Europe's great cities. She saw the sweeping boulevards of Paris, the regal theaters of Vienna, and the enchanted canals of Venice, images that lingered from her younger years. Yet in these dreams she was not alone. A small cat with curious eyes padded by her side, an understated guardian. When she woke, the dream world left behind a halo of warmth around her heart, reminding her that present joys could harmonize with memories of the past. One might wonder what destiny held for Amara and Joskin. The future, like the city's labyrinthine streets, was unknown. An open canvas waiting for each new day's brushstrokes. And that unspoken promise of possibility was a comfort. The transformation in Amara's life demonstrated that healing can emerge from the simplest acts of kindness. Josquin, for his part, never questioned his good fortune. Cats, by nature, live in the moment, neither mired in regrets of the past nor anxious about tomorrow. In his contented purring, he showed Amara that perhaps she too could learn to live more wholly in the now. The old house remained their shared sanctuary. Walls, once soaked in sorrow, found themselves alive with the spirit of renewal. Passers-by might see the woman tapping out a concerto on the piano while a sleek cat, perched upon a windowsill, gazed at the garden beyond. In turn, neighbors spoke in hushed yet delighted tones about the reawakening of that once quiet mansion, remarking that the old place seemed to have found its heartbeat again. And so the grand structure, which had so long carried the echoes of an isolated existence, now resonated with gentle warmth and the lullaby of a second chance. Late one evening, after a fruitful day of practicing new musical compositions and receiving a friendly visit from Mrs. Harcourt, Amara felt a deep sense of contentment. The sky was sprinkled with stars, shimmering like the applause once lavished upon her in her glory days. She climbed the sweeping staircase with Joskin by her side, pausing on the landing to catch her breath. By the time they entered her bedroom, the moon had risen high, casting a silver glow across the floor. She changed into her nightdress, brushed her hair in long, measured strokes, and slid beneath the covers. Joskin hopped onto the bed and curled into a familiar spot near her feet. The hush of the house was no longer oppressive. It was a tender quiet, filled with the breath of two beings at peace. She reached down, grazing her fingers along the cat's silky coat, feeling his purr vibrate like a faint lullaby. In the comforting darkness, she whispered a gratitude she hadn't known she could feel, for a day well lived, for the music that still flowed through her veins, and for the gentle companionship that dispelled a loneliness that once seemed insurmountable. Her eyes fluttered closed. Beyond the bedroom window, the timeless city carried on. Carriages rattled by, footsteps echoed against cobblestones, distant conversations mingled in the night air. Inside the room, woman and cat drifted into a shared tranquility. The truth was simple yet profound. They had discovered each other at precisely the right moment, bridging the gap between past sorrow and future hope. And so they slept, side by side, the bond between them as luminous as any star in the firmament, hopeful for whatever dreams might come. With the dawn, they would rise to greet another day, continuing a story of quiet understanding, devotion, and the enduring power of small, unexpected acts of kindness. Even as the years advanced and memory began to blur for Amara, one detail shone constant and clear. She was not alone, and neither was the cat who had once been a nameless stray. From that day forward, they walked a path together, forging new memories out of the fleeting moments life offered, grateful for every shared sunrise and every peaceful night.